Hello everyone, this is Carl Shiflett, and in this short video I'd like to demonstrate to the Windows Forms developers out there how your skills, your layout skills in Windows Forms can be utilized in WPF. So I'm going to show you a couple demonstrations, and so let's hop right into it. First, let me show you what we're going to try to make here. What we've got here is we've got a Windows Forms form, and we can see that how I've got this set up, where I've got each of the text boxes is anchored to the left and to the right, so that they resize, and also the buttons are anchored to the right so that they move with the right edge. All right. So that's a very typical form for a Windows Forms developer, and understanding the same terminology when I use the term anchoring. So let's go ahead and start up a new project in WPF, and I'm just going to use a C# WPF app, and I'll call this Windows Forms Layout Demo. How's that? And here we go, and we'll go ahead and open up our screen now. So first thing we want to do is go ahead and change our title. So to do that, we use the Properties window in WPF. And so it's called Title. I would change that to Customers. Or I think it was called Customer in the previous form. And we can see that our title's changed. So let's go ahead and lay our form out so that it'll look exactly like the other form. So to do that, what I want to first do is go ahead and get the size approximately the same. And you can see here, see those little numbers down here in the lower right corner, how they change as I move, make the form bigger or smaller. So the other form is about, I don't know, it was probably 350 by something, so we'll go to 350, and 317 we'll start with that. So we can see that there's 350 by 317. Another way to set that is you can set, we have in WPF, we have the ability to view just categorize, just like Windows Forms, and there's a category called Layout. So if I come down here to Layout, and we can see where we have our height and our width. So our width is 350, our height, we'll make it 320. So you can also set it with the Properties window in addition to the design surface. All right, so now what we want to do is begin our layout. So we'll start with some labels. And what I want you to do, notice that as soon as I brought the label onto the design surface, see how this area right here, it turned blue and then it's white. If I get away from it, it'll go back to the way it was. What that's showing you is the current drop target. So it's letting you know that when you want to drop something on the design surface, when you do, this is exactly where it's going to go. So I've got myself a label here, and I'll show you a few quick things about WPF. The first one is our designer. When you get up near an edge, you're gonna get an edge snap line. See, I've got it there. I get the same snap line over here, down here at the bottom. So when you get close to edges, you can get those snap lines. All right, so that's our first thing. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and set up my label. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and set its content property. That's how you do it in WPF. We don't set a text property, we set a content property. So first name, and then I want to go ahead and get a text box. I'll take this text box, I'll drag and drop it onto the design surface, and again you can see where the target drop target is white and it has a blue box around it. And now what I'm going to do is quickly show you the snap line, so you can see it shows you how far you are away from the other control. It also shows you you get that text-based snap line. You can also get the snap line at the top. So it's pretty full-featured. Now once I let go, I can see that I'm anchored to the left and I'm anchored to the top. So if I want to anchor to the right, there's a couple ways I can do this. One way, in fact, what I'll do is I'll bring up our layout category, and you can see that the horizontal alignment is left right now. So that's what a horizontal left is. So what I want to do is I want to click here on this little dot, and what that did, see how that changed the horizontal alignment to stretch? All right. So in WPF, horizontal alignment stretch is equivalent to anchor left, anchor right. All right. So now what I'm doing, I'm going to make this, I'm going to size it out to the size up till I get to the snap line out here on the edge. And that looks pretty close to what we had before. Now what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and multi-select, and I'll hit Control Insert. That's one way, or I can right click, say copy, and then I can just paste it in. And then now I can grab this, and you can see how it sets me up. That's 6 away, and you can see how those little numbers are changing there. There's 15, 14, and I can get, there's a couple snaps there where you can figure out one. So there's a snap at 6, there's a snap at 14. I kind of like that. I'll just paste again, grab it, come down here, 6, 14 looks good. Okay, do it again, paste, and 7, 14 again. Alright, now I'll come back here and I can change this. Here's my label, so I'll change it to first, last name. And I think we had email was the next one, right? So we come over here, email. And this one should be phone. Alright. So now we want to do our gender. So we're going to come over here to our toolbox, and we'll grab our radio button, Control, and I'll go ahead and set it up so it's 14 below. And then I can grab another label, and I'll come over here and I'll drag and just drop it on the surface just for a second. So what I want to do is I want to line this label up with this one, and then I want to line it up with the text. See how it's lined up on the left, and it's also lined with the text of the radio button. And then that last label here is gender. And then the design surface makes this very easy to do this, doesn't it? So we can come over here and we can set this to male. And we've got one more to do here, radio button. We'll just drag and drop it, and it looks pretty good. And you'll notice that it's I've got my text-based alignment there, and I'll set this to female. And oops, I think I misspelled that. There we go. All right, so now I got 2 buttons to go. So I'll just come down here and I'll just create the 2 buttons just like this. And now what I want to do is when I do this, I'm going to use my left alignment. See how, I'm sorry, my right alignment, I'm right on the snap edge. And then I'm going to go ahead and dock this button to the right. So to do that, see how I can click that little button and you see the arrow shows up? And I'll remove that from the left side. I'll just bring this down a little bit more. And I'm going to do the same thing to this button. So I can click it so it'll stay docked on, or so, I'm sorry, it'll stay anchored to the right. And I'll click this other button here so that it doesn't. And that looks pretty good. Maybe down a little bit more. All right. So we can see that this is not a big production in WPF. Very simple. We can still how the designer helps us to do the same things we're used to doing in Windows Forms. So now if we look at this, and if I resize my form, you can see I'm getting the same exact behavior that I had before. So that's pretty nice. Same exact behavior, same skill set that Windows Forms that you've had for many, many years as a Windows Forms developer. Alright, so now that we've created our form, let's create a 2-column form. But before we can do that, let me show you what's going on underneath the covers. In a WPF application, there's a root control, which is the control that is the outer, if you will, the outer control. We call that the root control. And in this case, it's the root. It's the very first control inside the form. It could be a user control, a page. Well, actually, it could be just about any control. It can be the root control. But in most cases for forms, it's either a window or a user control or a page. All right. So inside the window, it takes one child control, which is a grid, and we've laid out all of our other controls inside this grid here. All right. So now what we want to do, and I've showed you this for a grid because we're gonna take advantage of one of the grid's features, is we're gonna take the grid and we're gonna add a column to it over here on the right. So watch what I do. I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna say grid column, insert after. Now as soon as I do that, what's happened is it's taken my grid and it's given me I have 2 columns here. I have a column that is star, that it has its size is 1 star, and this one is 126. Now, we've got some articles, and there's links inside the article that accompanies this video that explains, goes into great detail about grid sizing. That's the grid row column and grid row and grid column sizing. So for this video, we'll just I'll show you a short trick. Now notice this is at 126, and what I've done is I've clicked inside this column, which is select the grid. You can tell the grid's selected because the rail adorner is selected. This is called the grid rail adorner. And so over here there is a columns definition and a row definition. So I'm going to click on the columns definition, and it brings up this dialog, and you can see here that I've got the first column, which is column 0, over here is 1 star, and you can see that it has 1 star. And if I come over here to this column definition, this is resized at 126. So what I can do is I can click on the property marker, and I can say reset value, and what that does, that sets it to 1 star. And I'll go ahead and close this now. So now 1 star, what that is, star sizing in WPF and Silverlight is proportional sizing. That means if this is a 1 star and this is a 1 star, they're each given equal space. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to click outside the window, and I'm going to resize this. Now notice the columns each have the same size. See how if I make this smaller than or larger, they all maintain their size, right? So what I want to do is make this about this big right now, and our objective is to get a 2-column form. So watch what I'll do. I'll just come over here, and I can just control click on each of the controls here, and I can say copy, and then I'll just paste them in. Just paste, and now they're all selected, and I'll just move them right over. Notice how I can easily line these up on the edge, on this edge, and let it go. And now I come over here, and I can change my labels real quickly. So I can come over here, change this to street, change this to city, change this to state, and the last one I'll just adjust it and change it to zip. Now all I have to do now to complete my form is grab my 2 buttons, which are anchored to the right, and just bring them over here, and notice that they stay anchored to the right. We call that horizontal alignment right and horizontal alignment left. So now when I come over my form and I resize it, notice I get nice column resizing automatically, so that this column of text boxes and this column of text boxes resizes with the form, and my buttons stay anchored over there on the right and the left. Alright, so now that I've showed you how to utilize the same skills that you have in Windows Forms in WPF to create the same exact form with the same behavior and with the same speed and ease, let me show you how to create a content-based layout. And this is what you'll find typically in WPF. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and click in my design surface, press Control A, and that'll allow me to select all the controls and just delete them. I can come up here and drag this column away, and it'll disappear. So now I'm back to 1 row and 1 column. So let me show you another way to quickly create a layout. So what we're going to do in this case, we're just going to throw the controls up on the screen. We really don't care too much about we're not going to spend any time trying to place them exactly. That's actually just completely unimportant at this point. So here we're just going to change this to first name, and you'll understand why I'm doing this in just a second, because it just doesn't matter. The reason what doesn't matter is spending time with it, because you'll see how they'll automatically lay themselves out for us in just a second. And I think what would we have? The next one was phone. And the last one was gender, I think, here. So we'll come over here and we'll go gender. Alright, so now we just need some text boxes. So we'll drag our text boxes over here, and we'll just very quickly lay them out. Not worried about too much about anything, because it does at this point. It's all going to be good. And then for this last one, I'll complete this one in just a second. So now what we're going to do, we're going to click outside the controls, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to up on my rail adorner, I'm going to click, and by doing that, that adds a column. So now I've got myself a column here, and then I can do the same thing for each of the rows. See how I'm just creating these little rows here, and I'm going to move this up because I actually want to create one row underneath it. So let me just grab this and move this down like this. Come over here, move this up, and I want one extra row at the bottom. You'll understand why in just a minute. So now what I can do is I can click inside the grid and press Control A, and that'll allow me to select all the children. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and say Reset Layout All. So now what I just did was reset all the layouts for all of these, and what it did, it removed height, width, all the alignments are removed and they're all set to stretch, the margins are all gone. And while I've got them selected, I'm going to come over here to my properties window and just type MAR, and that'll bring up margin, and I'm going to type a 6 there. And you can see how now all the controls have a margin of 6. So now deselect them, and I'm going to go to each row. And notice when I get over the rail adorner, my mouse comes over here, it has this little pop-up, and I'm just going to click the auto. And what it's going to do is going to set each of these rows to auto size. And I'll do the same for gender. And you'll notice the last row is size 16 star, and it's always good to leave your bottom row, especially in your main form, just the star size. All right. So now you saw how quick that was. That was pretty much instantaneous. And if we want to make it look like the original form, it was something like that, right? And we can make it a little bit wider for that first column. And I'm going to click on my grid and make my first column auto also. So now my first column isn't a fixed size. See how that it's not proportional anymore. All right, so we need to get our radio buttons in there. So let's come down here. And in WPF, we have this panel called the Stack Panel. So I'm going to click on Stack Panel, and I'm going to draw it inside this cell. Notice how my target there is white. See how that cell was white that I was targeting there? And what I can do is I can right-click on it and say Reset Layout All. And of course, I can set its margin to 6, so it'll be like the other ones. And in a stack panel has a property called orientation. And what it allows you to do is a stack panel can stack its children either vertically or horizontally. So I'm going to come over here and click on horizontal. Since the stack panel is selected, I can come over here to my radio button, and I can double click it once, twice, and see how the children just go right in there. How once the stack panel was selected, it just each time you click, it would put more children in there. So I can click on the first radio button, and I can change its content property to male, and change the other one to female. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for the margin property while I've got that one selected, and I'm going to set its margin to, and you see how there's this little drop down here? Well, if I click it, watch what it does. See, it gives me like a little graphic that shows me which property I'm actually setting. So if I come over here and I type 11 and I press enter, what that does, that commits an 11 left, top 0, right 0, bottom 0. So there's a little new tool that we've added, makes it much easier. And if you click it twice, see how it stays pinned. If you come over here and you can unpin it. So in this case, when you click away, it'll go away. So what we've got here is there's our female all set up, and it has a nice spacing there. You can make it bigger if you wanted. So now we just need our 2 buttons, right? So here's our 2 buttons, same as before. We'll come over here. We'll go ahead and pin this to the right. We'll click the little adorner there, and we'll click this rail here. That'll turn that off, and do the same thing here, just like we had before. And you could see how quick I was able to, oops, I just want to pin that to the right. You could see here how quick and easy it was. Content, I could set this to OK, just like before, and set this one to cancel. So you can see how really fast and easy it was in WPF to lay out a form the way a lot of WPF applications are laid out. And if we take a look at the XAML, we can see that we have our collection of rows, and we have our collection of columns, and here's our controls, where each control is placed. And you can see the XAML it's really not that much. It's mostly positioning within the rows and columns. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and you got something out of it, and you're able to understand that the WPF layout system is very powerful, and used with the designer, it's very easy to lay out WPF line of business application forms. So have a wonderful day and enjoy WPF and Silverlight. Thanks.